Alright, so how are we gonna get out of here?
It'll be pretty simple, actually, but I think we should learn about cooperation before we move forward. We've both worked alone most of our careers, so this is a bit of a new field for us.
Right. Well, luckily, I've got my trusty... Oh, wait, it's over there.
Oh, right. Let me see what I've got.
Oh, don't tell me you've got some kind of super-powered magnet that could pull that thing over here. Wow. Okay, I have clearly underestimated you.
Of course you have. So, how does this thing work?
Just hit that button on the side and we can start doing research on cooperation.
Okay, cool.
So, what do you got?
It's telling me to talk about real-world examples first. Is that part entirely necessary?
It's mostly just to have something to write jokes about.
Okay, so cooperation is something that humans do together very well, naturally. We are a social species and thrive off of each other's help and company. A long time ago, before modern civilization, we went around in hunter-gatherer tribes and would hunt large game through the power of numbers.
We were certainly a force to be reckoned with, considering we have systematically made numerous species go extinct for our own survival and enjoyment.
We were even so good at cooperation that we forced other species into cooperation with us, such as dogs, cats, horses.
We were so good at cooperation, we later decided to screw cooperation and make our political system a two-party shout-fest for no really good reason.
One of the purest forms of cooperation is marriage. Two people essentially saying that they are devoting their lives to cooperating for however long they have left on the world.
Don't get any bright ideas.
Who do you take me for? One of Kojima's women? You're gonna need to work a little bit harder to get me to that point.
Okay, fair enough. Companies and governments cooperate on things all the time, helping each other to develop new tech or share ideas about how things should work.
Of course, you can't believe any company or government is out for the best interests of anyone ever, so we have to assume that all cooperation is a conspiracy. Wow, maybe I've been on Facebook a little too much recently.
Maybe. Anyway, this is about the time I switch over to the Games tab and start talking about stuff that could actually help me out.
Wait, so you get all your strategic info, the thing that could make or break your mission, from video games?
Is that weird?
How many missions did you say you've been on?
This is my first real one.
Well, it's gotten you this far.
Hey now, I don't appreciate that. Are we working together or not? You're working with me, and I need to do things my way.
Fine. Okay, let's see here. Cooperation in video games started as far back as the arcade era, and to be more specific, the first documented co-op game that I could find was called Fire Truck in 1978. It had one player controlling the gas, brake, and the two front wheels, while the second player controlled the two back wheels, sort of like the video game equivalent of that video of the fire truck snaking in and out of traffic.
This honestly feels really ahead of its time. It's that weird sort of janky co-op thing that reminds me of Octodad, where two people are controlling one entity and have to communicate every action they take.
Then, of course, we can't forget Mario Bros. You simply platform around and kill enemies to get through the levels. Since the enemies require you to hit them from underneath before you can kick them off the level, having a second player to work alongside with is the best way to get through the levels smoothly.
Alternatively, you can compete to see who can get the most points by the time you inevitably fail, because the game keeps track of your scores separately. It's an interesting idea that it can be cooperative or competitive depending on what you decide to do. As far as co-op in the arcade is concerned, one of the most popular genres is the beat-em-up. Stuff like Double Dragon, Final Fight, and Time Crisis 2 were very popular in the arcades for multiple people.
But then, consoles started to become the primary way people experience video games, and with it, the concept of co-op began to fall even more by the wayside. This was largely because most consoles in that day couldn't handle two players at the same time. Considering the fact that this is still an issue to this day, it's always impressive when developers can make it work.
Many co-op experiences, especially those ported from the arcade era, replaced the simultaneous co-op with alternating players, like Double Dragon. Super Mario Bros. Also featured this system. Still, some arcade ports ended up becoming far more popular on home consoles, the most famous of them being Contra, still considered to be one of the best co-op experiences of all time.
Co-op sports games were obviously very popular, but perhaps more interesting is the few co-op RPG games that existed during this time. Notably, Secret of Mana on SNES had co-op, which is still pretty relevant to the design of co-op games today. The first player only controlled one character in the party, the others being controlled by the computer usually, but 2 more players could hop in and control the rest of the characters. This is still very unique even today. The 2 extra players could even drop in and out whenever they wanted, something that even modern video games can't seem to see the importance of.
The release of the Nintendo 64 marked the start of home consoles having 4 controller ports, meaning that co-op became more readily available during this generation. On the other side of things, PC gaming during this time had very little co-op at all, probably largely due to the way PC games were controlled, but also because that would require you to sit close to a PC gamer and you'd have to smell their armpit stank the whole time, so I wouldn't recommend it.
Still, there were co-op experiences to be had for PC gamers, one notable example being Doom. 4 people could travel through the campaign together on different computers over a local network, and the campaign difficulty was scaled to the amount of people you had, almost like the first example of what Borderlands would eventually master.
As far as history is concerned, this is a great place to stop with the chronological recounting because it starts to fall apart a bit. Co-op doesn't really innovate much, at least not in the traditional sense, until much more recently. So let's go over some more generic things about co-op in games. Firstly, distinctions can be made between different types of co-op, or multiplayer, to be more or less specific.
The kind of co-op we've been referring to thus far is couch co-op, which usually means that the players are at least in the same building, but often they're on the same couch. LAN parties count in this as far as I'm concerned. Then there is online co-op, which usually involves people playing the same game, but from any different location through the internet.
Then there's competitive multiplayer, one of the primary things driving modern gaming, especially to younger generations. Stuff like the online component of Call of Duty, Fortnite, For Honor, and Battlefield are great examples. This isn't exactly co-op, but you do work with other people most of the time, and good team tactics is a great way to have an instant leg up on your enemy.
Next, we've got MMORPGs, or massively multiplayer online role-playing games. These combine competitive and cooperative styles of gameplay depending on what you want to do, and World of Warcraft is probably the most popular example. In it, you've got questing, which you often do alone, but you've also got dungeons and raids, which pit a team of players against many enemies at the same time. On the competitive side, you've got PvP, or player versus player, in which players compete against each other in traditional game modes such as Capture the Flag and Deathmatch.
Finally, and perhaps most interestingly, is the advent of asynchronous multiplayer. In this system, certain actions that one person makes within their own single-player experience can directly affect the experience of someone else. The earliest example of the way it's primarily used today is in Dark Souls. In it, players could set down notes that others could read, giving tips or perhaps even deliberately misleading anyone who should happen upon them.
You also could set down a sign that someone else could find and activate, summoning you into their world and allowing you to fight alongside them. This is the jolly cooperative side of Dark Souls, but the competitive side seems more prevalent. You could use an item that will let you invade any random schmuck's world, giving you a chance to kill them.
Asynchronous multiplayer is also a big part of Stranding, but there is no competitive component this time. All players could put structures down in the world, which could then be seen and used by others, and everyone could pool their resources together in order to build stronger versions of those structures. You could, of course, decide to bum off everyone else's stuff and never contribute, but it's a good idea to help those that help you, of course. If people like your structures or any structures you help build, those likes will go directly to improve your character, so cooperation is essential to that game.
Now, for the rough stuff. Co-op is dying rapidly. It's honestly really sad because... Wait, shh. I'll try to distract him. You grab the key off his pen. Hey, Dave. Been playing any good video games recently?
Actually, yeah. I've been playing a little Dauntless. I'm really appreciating how everyone that plays that game is a small child. You know, it feels like it gives me a leg up.
Yeah. I bet that makes it pretty fun, huh?
Yeah, it does. Well, anyway, I've got to continue my patrol.
Okay, have fun beating kids. Did you get it?
You best believe it. Nice job.
Hey, you too. All right, unlock these cells and let's get moving. We've got to get to the records room and find that intel you need. How do I turn this thing off?
Oh, just that button on the other side.
Cool.